I don't even know how to start this video other than Niri is freaking amazing. So imagine that you've got multiple monitors. It just works in the most intuitive, flawless, non-buggy way you can ever imagine in the history of the world. If you're using a laptop with no external displays and you just have the trackpad, no mouse or keyboard, it's got world-class support for using the trackpad. I'm one who typically uses desktop machines, but I do have a laptop running Niri. I traveled with it. I used that machine on the road for 3 weeks. And for the first time in my life, using a laptop with one screen actually feels good. You can filter and flip between different windows and make really good use of your space. And yeah, it's so intuitive. And that intuitiveness doesn't stop at laptops. I don't know. I've been using different systems now for 25 years. And I've tried dynamic tilers. I tried a Windows operating system. I tried different other approaches for different things, and Niri on the desktop with multiple monitors and keyboard and mouse, etc. It is so good, and wow, okay. So in this video, we're going to demonstrate using all sorts of different features that I use in my day-to-day of Niri, and then also go over some of the configuration if you want to replicate or just check some stuff out. It's also all up in my dot files if you want to play with that as well. By the way, I will mention here too that I am recording a 4K monitor over here. I typically run this thing at native resolution, like 1:1 sizing, but I'm scaled into 200% for the sake of the video. But here's a cool feature in Niri. It's like, now I just scaled the entire, I'm not going to say operating system, but the compositor scaled everything to 300%. Maybe I can go to native resolution, or I just want to go to this. I keep saying resolution, but it's not like changing the resolution of the monitor. It is scaling things to where it is perceived to be that, but it happens very, very quickly. And yeah, that's really nice. Let's open up a second terminal window here. And so far, this is like a normal dynamic tiler. You can see the little focus window. By the way, I'm doing the mouse to click between these, but I can use hotkeys as well. Also, if I wanted to, I can swap the windows around left and right too. I'm going to be using quite a bit of hotkeys here, by the way. I'm not going to call them out on video just because they're all in the config file, and it's probably going to be different for you anyways. This is where things get a little bit interesting. Let's say that you were to open up a third window, a browser, or whatever it happens to be. With a normal dynamic tiler, they all would kind of adjust your view of the world here. Now, they're going to do those in different ways. One of them might just like pop something up in the bottom right over here. If you've got like a primary, secondary stack type of thing, maybe the left side never gets modified no matter what, but only the right side does. But I've used these tools in the past, and it never really works too well, at least for the workflows that I deal with. So, I typically have something that I'm working on. Maybe it's a code editor, or I'm doing some video editing or something. It's like some important thing. But like, if I want to open up some other window, like a file manager or a browser or something like that, I don't really want that to modify the state of the system here. It's like I want my original main thing not to change. And yeah, you can like float windows with Hyperland or other tilers where it gets floated on top so it doesn't disrupt your stuff. But it's like there's other ways to do this as well. And this is where Niri comes into play. So let's say I've got this left window focused here, and I just want to pop open a browser to the right. So I just hit a hotkey to open up that browser to the right. And it just did that. It didn't modify here, because here, if I start opening up some files or whatever, you can imagine maybe you're coding something, like you don't want your view to get changed. Now the font size is massive because I'm zoomed in so much, but it's like you get the idea. But where did that other terminal window even go? And that's where scrolling comes into play, because here I can just scroll to the right to that other terminal window here. And now I'm using the hotkeys to do that, but I can also like drag a title bar of a window if it has one, and then I can just scroll left and right here with the mouse, where, with a trackpad, there's gestures to do that as well. And, Niri is not limited to scrolling. Like, for example, let's say I've got this view set up here. Maybe you're working around in your code editor here, but it's like, now I want to see the other terminal window, and I kind of want this browser window to disrupt my view here. I want the browser window in the bottom left. Well, you can hit a hotkey with Niri to do that, to bring that other terminal back in here. And there's that, browser on the bottom, or I can bring it back over here, or I can do it with the mouse as well. If I just want to like drag that, Niri is going to show you like zones that you can drop this in. So I can drop it down here to be below the terminal, or, if I wanted to, I could drop it up here to be above, or if I wanted to, I can drag it back to be, its own column over here. And there's all sorts of different ways to hit different hotkeys to orient things the way that you want them basically on your screen, which is really nice, actually. Even here, it's like, I can have this stuff in view. If I just want to like bring that other second terminal window underneath the Firefox, I could just do that in one key, and then there it is. Oh, I want to like expel it back out. There it is over there. And yeah, let's open up, I don't know, Thunar or something like that, just so we have more stuff on the screen. And now you might be thinking like, well, you start scrolling around and you have all these different applications open. What if you had like 30 different things open? Like, it's going to be this massive horizontal infinite plane of stuff. It's going to be very hard to find stuff. Like, you're going to have to like cycle through all things like this, and like, how do you even do that? So there's a whole bunch of different ways to not get around this, but like work with a system in this way. So one is like, well, we're scrolling horizontally now. You can start scrolling vertically. Like, these are called workspaces. You can see them up here. If I pop open, I don't know, let's say another terminal window here, Niri is going to dynamically create different empty workspaces as you go. You can use named workspaces. I don't really use them, so we're not going to cover that in this video here, but it's like, for my workflows, typically I've got a couple of dynamic workspaces that I just use stuff on. And then, I flip between them because now it's like, well, I can scroll vertically now to this one or this one, and they all have their own horizontal plane. So if I open up a browser over here, and I don't know, we'll go with Thunar again over here, it's like, well, now there's 3 things open on this workspace, sure. But if I want to go back up to where I was before, now there's all sorts of different ones here as well with its own horizontal plane, which is actually really nice. And you can move things between workspaces very easily, different windows. But it gets even better because, maybe now it's like, okay, you've got a lot of stuff running on your system. Like, how do you even see all the things? So there's a couple of different ways to do that. One, there's Alt Tab. So you could just tab into this Thunar here, and that jumped me down to the second workspace. Or I can go back up to, I don't even know which one is on one workspace, which is going to be interesting because I'll show you why that matters in a sec. But here it's like on my second monitor, I've got OBS running, and I'm actually using Firefox on my second monitor to act as a key light to light up the right side of my face. But yeah, let's go back to, let's say this here. Yeah, there's even a better or more interesting way to get an overview of your system. So here's another hotkey here, and this just brings up an entire overview of your entire system. You can see all the different windows that you have open here. You can even scroll between them just to see even more. But yeah, it's literally called an overview because it's giving you an overview of everything. So you have your different workspaces, your different windows. You can even start moving around things in this workspace mode. Like if you just want to have this, maybe tiled on the bottom there and just click into it if you'd like. Now it's like, that's the state of your system. So this overview mode is very nice just to very quickly get a glance of what's happening. Where is it? Do you want to move it between different things? That's fine. If you want to take this .files one here and just like move it as a different column inside of workspace 1, there it is. And now it's in workspace 1, it's no longer in workspace 2. It's very easy to do these types of things. By the way, if I wanted to, I can also just like pop Thunar over to my second monitor. You don't see that being recorded now, but it is. And now here it's back on the monitor that we were just recording here. So you have all of these different ways to manipulate windows and tile them on demand. You can just close windows however you want here. But there's also really cool features too. For example, I will mention here too that everything has been sized to take up half the screen or full screen or whatever, but it's like you could start maximizing a window like this, right? It went full width. And the really cool thing about that is like, yeah, it didn't mess around with the width of the other things. If I want to go back out of maximize mode, you can also make it take up 2/3 or 1/3 or whatever. Or if you want to do the same thing with something that has been tiled like horizontally. Like if I bring this over here, you can also do the same thing with the height of stuff. So it's like, it's really easy to manipulate stuff there with hotkeys or using the mouse. Because again, if I wanted to, I can just resize this stuff however I want with the mouse as well if you'd like. But it gets even cooler too, because maybe there's a use case where you kind of want to use tabs, because tabs could be useful where, maybe you've got this open here on the left, but what you really want is instead of tiled horizontally like this, maybe you want a couple of different things open. Actually, do I have something open here? Let me open up another window here. Well, I don't want to make it full screen. I actually hit the wrong hotkey. There is Thunar here. And if I wanted to, I can bring this to be like this, and then also like this to where, you've got a stack here of 3 different things. But, let's say that you want to kind of keep these things grouped up together, but you don't want your view of the world to be like just 1/3 for each one of these, right? What you could do is, depending on how you have hotkeys set up, is you can create tab group out of them. And this is going to be a little bit hard to see on video, but like there is now a little thing to the left of this focused window here. Let me actually get rid of Firefox. It might be easier to see on the video here because we're not competing with colors, but you could see these little vertical strips here, and each one of them is basically a tab. Well, it is a tab. If I want to open up Firefox again, there it is. If I want to move Firefox to the left again, there it is. But it's like, yeah, now you have your view of the world to make it really easy for you to go between these different things. And of course, you don't need to just click on this thing to do that. You could actually use the hotkeys as well. Like for example, I've been using with my configuration here, the mod key and left and right to go left and right between these windows here, but I can use up and down now to go to the different tabs here. And that is super powerful because now you don't really have this idea of like a sticky or floating window or something, but it's like you can have this thing on the left that's, air quotes sticky or whatever. And now you can kind of just play around with different things on the right here to your discretion. And this is not limited to like one thing can only be one tab group. If I open up Thunar to the right of this, I can now hit another hotkey here and turn this one into a tab group here. And if I wanted to, I can just consume this into the tab. And now on the left here, you can see Thunar is in its own tab. Or if I want, I can expel it out to the right. And now it's no longer in the tab group. There's only one tab. So basically this tab group thing is really just like a column being condensed into a tab, essentially, I think. I don't know the real terminologies, but that's how I feel about it. Because when I don't have a tab group here, I got rid of it. Like this idea of like consuming things or expelling things or whatever you want to name these things as, they just work the same. I didn't hit a different set of key presses to make that work. So yeah, there's a lot of flexibility there to get that to work however you'd like. Other things that you could do too is, maybe you do want something to be floated, not tiled. That's really easy because you can hit another hotkey or, again, whatever hotkeys that you want. And now I've got a floating window, a floating Firefox window on top of these things here. And if I click and focus this window behind here, the floating window will always stay on top. And this is really nice because sometimes I'll have like a full screen app open, like Kdenlive to edit a video, but like I just want to like float some notes over in an area of the screen on top of Kdenlive so that when I'm editing, I can update the descriptions, like the timestamps at the same time. And I could put that on a second monitor, fine. But then I need to like move my eyes all the way over to the right every time I want to do that. It's just more efficient for me to have that like right in view, right next to where I'm doing the cutting and the video. So it's like, yeah, that's a really nice workflow there. And this also is apparent when you start using applications that have floating windows. Like for example, I can't think of a good one, but yeah, maybe we could do something like if I wanted to just, I don't know, maybe archive this folder here. Look, this automatically just floated in the middle. So you can configure stuff in Niri to be like, hey, by the way, if this window looks like a certain pattern, like by matching on the title or the class name or app name or etc., you can automatically have the things float for you. And yeah, that's really nice. So it gives you the flexibility to kind of give you the best of both worlds, tile by default or float by default, however you want. There's all sorts of different things you can configure as well. You can make all the windows open up, maximize like this if you want to. All of that is at your discretion here. So yeah, those are just some of the few things that I do with Niri in my day-to-day, just to like navigate, play around, and use the system here. And you might be wondering like, well, does it scale? I am using a system, actually I'll even show you because I can, using fast fetch here, sure. But yeah, if we take a look here at the fast fetch here, this machine is 11 years old. So it's like an i5 4460, blah, 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 16 gigs of memory, da-da-da-da-da. Imagine this on a system that has a lot more resources there. So I just closed that window, by the way. But here's a fun thing. So let me start, closing some of these windows here. Cool, you just quit out of here, close that, close this, close this. Like there's hotkeys to close all the windows that you want. I can go onto that second workspace, start closing things out as well manually. And now we're back to the beginning where we just had one window open. But I can open up through an R, right? Okay, cool. But how about this? Okay, so how many windows did I open? I actually have no idea, but I'll bet you it's a lot. So if I alt tab here, you could see pretty much a ridiculous amount of windows open. Not a ton, but a good amount. And yeah, you can just start scrolling to the right. Or you can start scrolling to the left. I'm just holding down the key. And this is happening with a GPU that is from 11 years ago that has 2 gigs of memory. It's an NVIDIA 750 Ti. Like imagine what this would be like on modern hardware. And it's running this smooth with this type of hardware. And yeah, that is pretty nice here too. So like performance-wise, this thing is liquid smooth on a device from ancient times. That makes me really happy as well. So, okay, let me start closing some of these windows here just so we can then take a look at how Niri is configured. Again, we're going to go over some of the configuration things that I've been doing. I don't want to close OBS, so I'm being careful on how fast or slow I'm closing these things with a hotkey. How about now? How many more do we have left? Okay, we've got a lot more open. I don't know. I guess I opened up a whole lot. There we go. Actually, what am I even talking about? OBS is running on a second monitor, so I'm safe from doing that because it's not going to jump to the second monitor unless you want to jump to the second monitor. So you can move windows between both. Like, it just works so well. Yeah, it's amazing, actually. So let me open up a terminal window here. Oh, by the way, I should mention here, too, that you can actually center windows very easily. Like, I just had a hotkey to do that. But if you have two different windows open, let's say you've got the browser window open, too, and maybe this one is smaller like this, right? So yeah, the nice thing here is, let's say you've got these 2 windows open here. You can just hit a different hotkey, whatever at your discretion to center the entire thing instead of just one thing at a time. But yeah, let's go back to here and just center this one and take a look here at my dot files. And we're going to go to the Niri config. And you know what? For this video, since I'm zoomed in so much, let's just make it maximized so we can take a look at all the different things. So yes, you can spawn things at startup. So I actually have Niri running through uwsm. So if we take a look, maybe start there, like how do you even start Niri as your session or whatever? Sure, if I open up like my Z profile, I've got the local file here that has all sorts of different things in here. Ignore some of this nonsense. I was screwing around with debugging some stuff and it's all working now, but this is all basically not important at all. But the bottom part is because here I'm using uwsm to start Niri desktop. And yeah, it's only going to start if it can start. And that's just put into the bottom of my Z shell profile, basically. And that's it. So when I boot up my machine, log in from a TTY, it's going to pop me straight into Niri. Nice. So let's go back to this config file here and take a look. So When that happens, at startup, niri is going to spawn all the things that we care about, or things that I care about. Sway idle, and it sets my wallpaper, notifications. There's waybar for up top, like Walker and Elephant. These are basically a combination to be an application launcher. So if I want to launch something like, Firefox, I can do that. I can do calculations. My God, there's going to be so many videos about this in the future. Yeah, MPD there for playing music. But okay, cool. So, all of your stuff is now started up however you'd like. There's all sorts of different configuration with niri. I have done a little bit of input configuration and some other things as well. So in my keyboard here, I just swapped caps lock with escape so that when I hit caps lock, it is going to basically hit escape, which is really nice for working with NeoVim. That's what we're looking at over here. I also like a really fast repeat rate on my keyboard. So for example, when I'm typing, if I were to just hold down a key, it's yeah, I want that to repeat very quickly. So that's what that does for me. So it allows the repeat rate to be very fast and also happen very quickly. So that's the delay and the rate as well. When it comes to the touchpad, I don't have one hooked up right now, but on the laptop, I have these here. So I like the natural scrolling, and then also tapping anywhere is going to register a left click. You could see I have comments for a lot of this stuff. I don't like mouse acceleration at all, so that's going to be flat for both of them. This might be the default actually, but in this one, I liked it so much I set it there just to be sure. And when it comes to the scrolling factor, when I hit the scroll wheel on the mouse, you can actually adjust how fast that is. So you can have that to be, let's say 0.5. By the way, if I save this file, niri is automatically going to reload everything. And by the way, if you do screw up your config, let's say that you just fat fingered that, you forgot this. When you go to save the file, niri is going to be like, hey, by the way, I can't parse that. Just run niri validate to see the errors. So let me open up a new terminal window here, and we'll just run niri validate to see the errors there. And it's like, oh, here, by the way, this scroll factor, that's an unexpected node. So basically it just means that it doesn't exist, basically is what it's saying. So yeah, let's go back to here. Let's close out this window just so we're not bouncing around. And then, yeah, there's some behaviors and aesthetics. So there is a built-in screenshotting tool with niri. I don't use it because I typically prefer to do other things besides just drag a region of the screen. So for example, I've got it hooked up with a little script where if I do drag a region of the screen, it's showing me the dimensions of that and all of this. And now it's going to get piped into SATTY, I guess. And now I can start annotating stuff if I want. Not going to do all sorts of things in this video about that, but I will in the future. It's a really nice screenshotting setup. Yeah, there's an overlay that can pop up here. Ooh, I just noticed that there's a typo in that comment there. But yeah, there's hotkeys that can be shown by niri's window here. So I've got a little hotkey to show that if I want. So this is going to bring up all the different important hotkeys that niri has. This will pop up by default unless you disable that at startup. That's what that option was doing there. You can't really see them all on the screen here because I'm zoomed in so much. That's actually an open discussion on niri to be how to display this stuff in a way that, works well if you've got a lot of line items here on a smaller display, but that's not important here or there. Gestures, yeah, there's this idea of hot corners where if you move your mouse or trackpad into a certain region, it does certain things. I don't like that behavior at all, so I actually have that turned off. And I also noticed it's killing me now that this is indented incorrectly. It should be 4. But yeah, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Great, cool. And then, yeah, these client-side decorations here are mainly things if you look at this window here for Ghosty, there is no close button or minimize or, whatever decorations you would normally see with a non-tiler. Yeah, we want to say prefer not to show those there, which is that. And then also there's things like gaps. So I know I've got very small gaps around the corner here. For example, if we make this to be normal size and we just open up another terminal, you can see there is a gap in the middle there. That's 8. So if I wanted to change that to be, 24, save that, you can see now the gaps are a lot larger. If you hate gaps, you don't want them, you can just do gap 0 and then the gaps aren't there. You can also turn off the focus ring as well, but let's bring the gaps back just so we can see that a little bit more in action. That focus ring is what we see here. If I wanted to change that to be, 4 instead of 1, then we can save that here. And now it's a big, thick focus ring there. I kind of like the thin one, but it's there if you want to adjust that. But yeah, you could do something like gap 0 and then set that to be 0. And then, yeah, you don't have any focus rings here. And now it's a little bit hard to tell what's happening, what's in focus. But hey, if you want that, you can totally do that. And again, this is not an exhaustive list of everything niri has to configure. These are things that I changed from the defaults that I happen to like. So there's more in the actual documentation if you want to go and check it out. I also have very, very small rounded edges here, just because you can see in NeoVim, this window here, has a very, very, very small rounded corner. And if I open up things the file fuzzy finder, these all have little rounded corners. And, I wanted niri itself to have the rounded corners, so that's why I have them there. But if I wanted to change this to something crazy, like 24, you can see these are big, gigantic rounded corners now, but I don't want that, but you can totally do that if you want. And then there's different ways to configure that too. Then there's all different rules that I have set up here for window rules for specific applications. So like if I'm playing a video back on YouTube, picture-in-picture mode at Firefox, I want that to be floated by default. And then also like when you're renaming files in Thunar or, certain tools, basically, I just want certain things to be floated. And then also beyond that, I also want, certain things to happen. Like for example, I've been launching terminals with a hotkey, but if I wanted to, I can launch them in a different way where I now actually have a floating terminal. I can just now do whatever I want. It doesn't disrupt the thing behind me. But I want that terminal to be opened with specific proportions, like 1/3 of the screen in width, and then also half in height. And you can also put a fixed amount if you just want to use pixels instead of that. But that allows you to do stuff like this, where you can have different rules for different things. And also with Thunar, I like this idea of opening it up in floating mode as well, because sometimes I'm working on something and I don't want it to be pushed over to the right in its own column. I just want to float it over. And then if I want to resize it, a floated window, I can totally do that. So floated windows, an example of just it being always on top is super nice. So let's close up. There's all different window rules. There's a lot of documentation on how to do that. The SATI one, whatever, is kind of nice because it also opens with a min width and height. Because, let's say that I were to just grab this tiny little region of the window here, SATI or whatever does not come up in a nice way because all the controls expect a min width. So in this case here, I just make sure it is at least the height and width here. So all the controls here can be seen. And then it just zooms in on the area that I made a screenshot of or captured, I guess. So there's ways to solve that. There is a lot of keybinds here. This looks way more scary than you would imagine, but it's not. So, and by the way, I will mention here too that it's really easy to include separate config files here because I've got themes all set up with everything where if you just change your theme to be something different, niri configuration, all the different tools are going to reset to be that theme, except for some graphical tools. I haven't really gone down that rabbit hole yet, but a lot of things will just automatically update. So like, for example, if I opened up a second terminal here and we do something like .theme, and then in this case, we'll go with Groovebox, let's say dark medium. If we do this, take a look at a couple of different things. So before I hit enter here on the right, we've got the focus window here, we've got Waybar up top, we've got Ghosty, the actual terminal here, and NeoVim here on the left as well. So if I change this theme over to use Groovebox dark medium, then everything is just going to automatically update and start using Groovebox's colors. You can see the focus window is, a different shade of color, everything updated to what it needs to be basically, and it's pretty cool. And if we opened up something like Launcher here, you can see that's been updated as well. But let's bring it back over to Tokyo Night Moon. And then, now things are back to where it was before. Wallpapers and all that changed as well. I didn't show that because the window was behind it, but it's all there basically. I've had that for quite a few years in my .dot files. But let's go back up to start looking at some of the keybinds because this is kind of interesting, I suppose. But, kind of just categorize these as I go. I've only been using the system for like a week and a half, so I haven't gone down ultra deep rabbit holes and everything, but this is the experience I've had so far. But there's mod, by the way, is the super key, which typically would be like the Windows key on, I don't know, like a normal US keyboard or something. But you can, change all of these different combos to do whatever you want for different things. This idea of like a hotkey overlay title, when I bring up this little help menu here, this help text that we see on the right is part of what you see based on what's defined here, which is pretty cool. But the idea here is you've got a hotkey and then you do something on that action when that hotkey is pressed. So Spawn in this case, there's a little .menu script that I wrote here that basically is just running this application. It's on my system path in local bin or whatever, but you can also do things like, show the hotkey overlay, which is, those important keys that I showed before. You can also the toggle, like in this case here, I'm doing mod O, which is, showing the overview mode, toggling that on or off. You can add little properties like repeat false. We'll go over some more details with other binds as well. But there's all sorts of different things that you can do here. I've got a lock screen set up. You could power off your monitors if you just want to maybe turn them off because you're going away for a while. You didn't want to wait for sway idle to kick in. To do that, you can exit out the entire niri session. I don't want to do that one now because it's going to kill the whole session here, but you could totally do that. It also gives you a dialog box ahead of time. So, even if you hit this by mistake, you have to hit OK to actually do it. Then different types of screenshots. You can do a region, you can do the whole window. I'm going to go into more details about that in different videos here. I've got a little color picker, again, different videos here, trying to focus more on the niri things. But it's notifications, switching themes, different media keys if you want to hook that up to where, you can raise the brightness of your monitor or maybe the volume of some music playing. All of that is here. And, again, not focusing on all the details of every line item here, but some interesting niri features about configuration, allow when locked true is pretty cool because this means when your machine is locked, let's say that, you go away from the keyboard for 15 minutes and it puts a lock screen on, you can still like lower the volume or play with the display settings here, because this is allow when locked true. So basically allows you to do that. I don't really allow that for many things, but it makes sense to be able to like mute sound and do stuff like that. Then yeah, there's also, other media keys like the calculator, blah, 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 app launcher. There's one for the clipboard. And, here it's like a whole bunch of different apps that you can launch as well. Again, if you like a keyboard focused thing, I've been hitting like Mod Alt T to open up a terminal, or, add Shift into the mix for a floating one. File manager, I can bring up a password manager. You can also load like RMPC for playing music, which uses MPD in the background. It's really awesome. And then I can open up a browser. I can open up a private browser. I can open up a isolated profile browser, which I'm going to start doing in all my videos now, which means I never have to blur my URL bar anymore, because I'm going to have a profile that's isolated that won't be my normal system, and super easy. I can just hit a hotkey to open that up. And then I could also play around with the zoom scaling too. I wrote little scripts to do this as well, like even incrementally. If I want to like hold down all these hotkeys, I can play with the scaling. So let's do this. So it says Mod Control Shift, and then basically plus minus sign. So I can do this. It's funny because it's in maximized mode, so you're not seeing it, but like the font size really is being scaled. And there's actually the one where I hit this one, which brings it back to 1. But, let's say I don't want 1, I want 2 actually. So let me just go and do Mod Control Shift and then tap this quite a few times here. I guess that will be probably 2. Maybe I should make a little notification thing pop up to show you what the active zoom is. That would be kind of nice. But yeah, let me actually zoom in a little bit more, since we're just looking at a lot of text. I want to make sure that you can see it. But yeah, okay. So we have like, now we have this idea of different window behaviors and columns and stuff like that. So it's like, yeah, you can move things over, you can center stuff, some of that stuff here. Nothing really new to go over, because again, you can look at this stuff at your discretion here and then tweak this however you see fit. I'm just looking for things that show you like different features that we haven't gone over. So here's another one too, like a cooldown milliseconds, 150. So if I just want to focus the next workspace or whatever, this protects you from spamming it to the end of the world. Like it's basically adding a cooldown there where you can't do that. Yeah, there's all sorts of different things that you can do. Here you can start using different hotkeys if you just want to like focus a different workspace. So I could just do Mod 2 to jump to the second workspace, or Mod 1 to go to the first one. I also didn't add overlay titles for all of them because it's like the same thing except like with numbers. So a little bit nice there. And this one, yeah, I'm not really using any VM software yet, but like this idea, sometimes when you're running stuff in a VM, it kind of like overtakes certain keys. This was in, niri's documentation. So I just wanted to have that here as well, just to be documented in a way where I understand what that is a couple of days later, or whatever it happens to be. So yeah, you can also include files here too. So like, for example, the theme one is being symlinked by the little theme switching script, but I also have this idea of like a .local file. So the local one has things specific to my setup that, it's not commit to the .files up on GitHub. So in this case here, what I wanted was, this is my DisplayPort 4K monitor. I want that to be positioned at 0, 0. In other words, what this is saying is like, I want this to be my primary monitor. So you can't see this, but I've got 2 monitors in front of me. This 4K monitor is like in line with me, directly centered. And then to the right, I've got a second monitor. And yeah, I want this one to be the primary one. And usually when I turn my machine on, the secondary monitor, I don't know, maybe the ports on the GPU, like this one usually gets picked up, or always gets picked up as like the preferred or default monitor. But really I want this one to be. And I also want its scale to always be, 1 times 0. Technically didn't need to set that here, but yeah, it's there because I just wanted to be explicit. And then also focus at startup. So like the mouse will be in the middle of this monitor here when I boot up, or basically log into Niri. And that's what I want, because, or it's not really related to the mouse. If I hit a hotkey to open a terminal, it's on this display here. So that's where focus at startup comes into play. And then I have other binds here where, technically this doesn't need to be here, but the scroll factor, there's little scripts that I have to basically start and stop recording, adjust these here. And I wanted this to be adjusted in the file that's not git commit, so it doesn't create a git diff, because this file is being loaded at the bottom of this config here. So anything that's in here is going to win whatever defined in the previous config. So that's pretty nice. And then also, yeah, I've got a couple of different things here that are personalized for my setup. Like I like using a note script that I have up on GitHub, but like it's not in my .files in the sense that it doesn't install that for you. But in that case, I want my notes to be floating and then open up at a certain min, width, and height at the areas of my screen. And then that's how I launch it here. So it's like I've got customized rules for just the system here, which is pretty nice. Yeah, because on the laptop, I can have different rules because the laptop doesn't have these displays here. And yeah, that's what this pattern does. It has nothing to do with Niri, but it's like Niri unlocks that by giving you the ability to include files here. And that was a feature that didn't exist for quite some time. It's a pretty recent addition in the most latest version of Niri. I'll put a tooltip up for the actual version. Actually, don't need to do that because let me open up a new terminal window. Niri, I guess it's version, Yeah, so this version of Niri introduced that ability to have includes here, which is pretty cool. So that's basically how I have niri configured. We went over some of the usages of it, which is quite nice. Runs really well for everything that it's doing. If I take a look here at NVIDIA SMI, basically looking at GPU usage here, even after doing all that crazy stuff here, niri is only using 200 megs of GPU memory. And on a fresh boot, it's going to use a lot less, like 60, 70 megs, 75, give or take. So it's also not using a whole lot of system memory. So if I jump over to here and take a look at BTOP, let's make this one full screen. We could see, yeah, I'm using 6 gigs out of my 16 on the system here, but niri is only using 300 megs with a whole lot of stuff open. Yeah, my CPU is a little bit cranked at 50% because I'm also recording OBS on the other monitor. A lot of things going on in the background, even apparently running Steam too, which I forgot to close down before recording the video, but like Steam is running too in the background. Like there's a lot of things going on the system that's 11 years old and it's blazing. Like there's no delay doing really anything, which is really good. There is some delay typing into Ghosty, but this has nothing to do with niri being slow or bad, or not even Ghosty being slow or bad. It's just, I don't know, there's something about inputting text into Ghosty that uses the GPU when your GPU is under pressure, whatever. I'm not going to make this video about that, but like there's open issues about that as well. But from the niri perspective, man, do I really like this setup, and wow, is it working so well for me that like it's a joy to use my machine on a day-to-day basis. So I'm really happy about that. But yeah, if you have any questions about this, let me know in the comments below. Again, all this stuff is available in my .files, the whole configuration for everything, complete with like an install script and all that. I'll probably do things about that in the future once it solidifies a bit more. But this is basically, week and a half with niri, and I'm happy about that. So if you liked the video, please give a thumbs up. Really does help a lot. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.